Joining us, New York Times reporter who covers the DOJ and law enforcement, Devlin Barrett. He's on the byline for the reporting. Chris O'Leary is with us as well. Devlin, it's a pretty specific bit of pushback from this administration. Walk us through what your reporting shows you.
Right. The reporting shows very clearly that Thursday, written instructions were sent out to FBI managers in the field saying that going forward, the FBI would not investigate cases of what the law calls assault on a federal officer. The reporting also shows that that same day, similar written guidance went out to at least some of the ICE personnel. So, this exists in writing. It was circulated. I take the, denial as a sign that this is not something the administration is committed to. But I think it's important to keep in mind that when it comes to ICE policy and the killings that have happened as a result of ICE policies, we just saw a week ago that they, issued an order to stop doing car stops and then rescinded that order within a matter of, I think, 24 or so hours. So it's not unheard of, frankly, for some of these decisions to go back and forth. But I think what is important is, to me, what's most telling about the reporting is that these investigations are a real source of contention inside federal law enforcement because of these shootings, because of these confrontations, and because of the way the Justice Department has been charging some of these cases.
Why is there so much contention?
Well, for one thing, you have the issue of, in some of these instances, we know that FBI agents were told to investigate only the narrow question of whether the people who were shot or the people who had confrontations with the ICE agents assaulted those ICE agents. Now, one of the tricky parts of that for any investigation is you can't really truly investigate just one side of an interaction. Almost by definition, if you're investigating an interaction between two humans, you have to gather evidence about what both of those humans did. So even in instances where the FBI is assigned to investigate, let's say, an ICE agent shooting an individual, almost inherently you're going to gather some evidence that could, in theory, be used to investigate the agent themselves.
What's the track record on investigating these shootings? Do we have an update on what's happening after the two killings of American citizens in Minneapolis, Devlin?
Right. When it comes to Minneapolis, there has been a great deal of back and forth and, frankly, internal frustration that those investigations weren't broader, weren't more fulsome, frankly, and didn't address, the larger question of, did the ICE agent perhaps violate any laws here, particularly civil rights laws, particularly laws about actions taken under the color of law. That's the legal term. This is the backdrop to these discussions inside the government. How do you investigate, if you do investigate, these instances where ICE agents fire their weapons?
I wonder about messaging, what internal messaging is being sent to these ICE recruits and ICE officers. Last week, we had a whistleblower on, Chris, who was saying that they're just not getting training. They're being rushed through the training. People who would normally fail the training are getting pushed through no matter what. And he's very worried about the threat that these officers, these new recruits especially, are putting the American public under because of their lack of training. On CBS over the weekend, on Face the Nation, Margaret Brennan did an extraordinary job of pressing Tom Homan on what happened in Maine. And she asked him repeatedly, what was that person supposed to do? These cars were not marked. What was he supposed to think? And Tom Homan said, well, they have sirens on top of them, but could not say whether the sirens were working. And that has happened so much, where these cars and these officers are masked. They don't appear to be clearly marked in some cases. And people, maybe they think it's ICE, or maybe they think it's someone else getting carjacked. Who knows what? On the question of messaging, is the administration messaging to the ICE officers, to the DHS agents, do whatever you want? We won't look into it too closely. We'll have your back. We'll find a way to explain it away.
It certainly seems that way to me. Number one, they are getting rushed through, and certainly the individual who has been identified as conducting the shooting in Maine, it does not look like he was properly vetted and certainly not properly trained, judging by his actions where he took a life. And the other thing, it's inexcusable that somebody would go after an individual who is not the actual subject of the investigation just because they're the same racial profile or same height and weight. And now you engage in a deadly force encounter because of somebody you had confused with somebody you thought was the focus of your investigation. Listen, I think the broader question is not that the FBI will not involve in assault on federal officer investigations. It's the broader issue that the FBI will not investigate DHS and ICE and CBP because the authority and the track record of the FBI doing that goes back to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, where the FBI started investigating institutional discrimination that include police departments, other federal agencies, and then again reinforced in 1994 with the Violent Crime Control Act. And the FBI looks into patterns and practices of discrimination, illegal searches, excessive use of force, and intimidation on parts of society, which we see those things playing out in front of us, right now. So it's, the concern about, you have an agenda and you're using brutal tactics, and it looks like people are getting a get out of jail free card, so they will continue to do it. It should be indefensible, and Tom Homan trying to justify it is, it's a disgrace.
All right, Chris O'Leary, Devlin Barrett, gentlemen, thank you very much.